The camera never lies, but sometimes it reveals truths you're not ready to see. Caleb Mitchell learned this on a Tuesday afternoon in Austin, when his lens caught something that would change everything. He was crouched behind the chain-link fence at UFCU Dish Falk Field, adjusting his telephoto for the perfect shot of UT's baseball practice. The September heat was brutal, even for Texas. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he focused on the pitcher's mound, where number 17 was warming up. Jackson Rodriguez moved with the kind of fluid grace that made cameras fall in love. Dark hair catching the sunlight, muscles defined beneath the burnt orange jersey, every motion deliberate and powerful. Caleb had been documenting campus life for his photography portfolio since transferring from Kansas 2 years ago. Austin felt like another planet compared to Salina, where the biggest news was wheat prices and high school football scores. Here, creativity bloomed on every corner. Food trucks lined Guadalupe Street, murals painted stories on brick walls, and students carried their dreams like backpacks. But behind his cannon, Caleb still felt like an outsider looking in. His dorm room and gesture center was a sanctuary filled with contact sheets and developing chemicals. Photos covered every wall, capturing moments of belonging he observed but never quite experienced himself. The shutter clicked as Jackson wound up for a fastball. Through the viewfinder, Caleb watched the perfect form, the focused intensity, the way Jackson's jaw tightened with concentration. This wasn't his first time photographing the baseball team, but something felt different today. Maybe it was the way the golden hour light hit Jackson's profile, or how his teammates seemed to orbit around him like planets around the sun. After practice, Caleb was packing his equipment when his phone buzzed. A notification from the dating app he'd been too nervous to use seriously. Someone had liked his profile. He glanced at the screen and nearly dropped his camera. Jackson Rodriguez was staring back at him from the tiny square photo. Baseball player, senior, looking for something real in a world full of games. Caleb's heart hammered against his ribs. The same face he'd been capturing through his lens was now on his phone. Reaching out across digital space, his thumb hovered over the screen. In Salina, boys like Jackson didn't notice boys like Caleb. Farm kids learned early to keep certain thoughts buried deeper than winter wheat. But this was Austin, where weird was wonderful and different wasn't dangerous. He swiped right. The match notification appeared instantly, and Caleb's breath caught. Jackson had been waiting, watching, hoping for the same connection. A message appeared within minutes. Simple but genuine. Saw you at practice today. Love your dedication to getting the perfect shot. Coffee sometime. That night, Caleb lay in his narrow dorm bed, staring at the ceiling where shadows from passing cars painted moving pictures. His camera sat on the desk, still warm from the afternoon sun. Inside its memory card were dozens of photos of Jackson, each frame a question he hadn't known he was asking. Growing up in Kansas meant learning to hide parts of yourself like storm shelters, dark and necessary and never spoken about. His parents called every Sunday, their voices carrying across the prairie wind to ask about grades, classes, whether he'd found himself a nice girl yet. Caleb always changed the subject, talked about his photography instead, about capturing Austin's energy through his lens. But tonight, staring at Jackson's message, something shifted. Maybe it was time to stop hiding behind the camera and step into the frame himself. Caleb reached for his phone and typed back, "Tomorrow at Cafe Medici, 2 o'clock. Sometimes the most beautiful stories begin when you finally have the courage to be part of the picture you're taking." Subscribe to Heart Stories to discover what develops next. Cafe Medici buzzed with students cramming for midterms over cold brew. Caleb arrived early, claiming a corner table where afternoon light would be perfect for reading faces. His camera bag sat beside him, a security blanket he couldn't abandon. Jackson walked in exactly on time, scanning until their eyes met. Up close, without fence between them, he was even more striking. Not just broad shoulders, but how he moved through space like he owned it. Confident, but not arrogant. His smile reached dark eyes in a way that made Caleb's detail-trained attention go haywire. They talked easily, conversation flowing like the Colorado River. Jackson studied business with Spanish literature, planning to expand his family's construction company into commercial real estate. His voice carried traces of San Antonio, vowels rounded by generations of bilingual households in Sunday dinners lasting until sunset. Caleb shared his story carefully, testing waters, photography major, pre-med dropout, Kansas kid learning to navigate a city where breakfast tacos were religion. Jackson listened with intensity that felt like being photographed himself, every expression cataloged. Conversation shifted when Jackson mentioned family. His mother, Sophia, called every morning at 7 sharp, checking he'd eaten, studied, stayed focused on baseball. His father, Miguel, worked 16-hour days building Austin's expanding skyline, expecting his oldest son to carry the Rodriguez legacy with pride. Caleb noticed Jackson's shoulders tensing when talking about home, fingers drumming his coffee cup. There was weight there, expectations heavy as Texas humidity. Being first Rodriguez to graduate college meant carrying hopes of parents who'd cross borders to give children opportunities they'd never had. Afternoons stretched into evening, coffee refilled, conversation deepening. Jackson described pressure of upcoming MLB draft, scouts watching every game, pitch, moment of potential failure. His teammates saw only scholarship, attention, confidence. They didn't see him calling home in Spanish after bad practices, reassuring his mother he was still her good Catholic boy. When Caleb mentioned his photography project documenting Austin's hidden stories, Jackson's interest sharpened. He wanted to see the work, understand capturing truth through a lens. They walked toward campus as sun painted sky burnt orange matching UT towers perfectly. In Caleb's dorm room, surrounded by contact sheets and chemicals, Jackson studied photographs with same intensity he brought to reading pitches. Images of street musicians on South Congress, food truck workers before dawn, students studying until eyes burned. Each photo told stories of belonging, finding place in a city welcoming dreamers. Jackson paused at one shot. Baseball players after losing game, shoulders slumped, heads down, weight of disappointment visible in every line. Caleb had captured it through fence, another observer documenting human truth. That night, they talked until dorm fell silent. Jackson shared stories teammates never heard, about translating at parent conferences, being proud of heritage while sometimes wishing it came without pressure to represent it perfectly. His voice dropped to whispers when he admitted baseball felt more like obligation than passion lately. When Jackson reached across narrow space and took his hand, Caleb's breath caught. Touch was careful, questioning, revolutionary. In amber light from desk lamp, surrounded by images of others' authentic moments, they created their own. But even as Jackson's thumb traced circles across his knuckles, Caleb could see conflict in his expression. This was new territory for both, but Jackson carried additional challenges. In Latino culture, machismo wasn't just expectation, but survival, especially for young men supporting family dreams on his pitching arm. Learning to love someone means understanding the weight they carry, even when you can't help them set it down. March in Austin meant wildflower season in baseball playoffs. But this year it also meant Austin Pride Week coinciding with most important series of Jackson's college career. MLB scouts filled stands at UFCU Dish Falk Field, clipboards ready, stopwatches ticking, futures hanging on every pitch. Caleb found himself documenting both worlds through his lens. Pride Week transformed downtown into a kaleidoscope of rainbow flags in celebration, while Baseball Diamond became pressure cooker of professional dreams. His photography project had evolved into something more personal, capturing intersection of identity and ambition in city embracing both. Jackson's performance on mound had been flawless all season, but weight of expectations was showing in subtle ways only Caleb noticed. Tension in shoulders before each game, hands shaking slightly when checking phone for messages from home, avoiding eye contact during conversations about future. They'd been meeting secretly for weeks now, stolen moments between classes and practices. Jackson would slip into Caleb's dorm after midnight, exhausted but needing quiet sanctuary they'd created together. They talked about everything except what was building between them, as if naming it would make it too real, too dangerous. Night before Scout's final evaluation, Jackson arrived looking shell-shocked. His phone had been buzzing all evening with calls from father, high school coach, teammates asking about draft prospects. Pressure was suffocating him. Caleb set down camera equipment and really looked at Jackson's face, reading stress like exposure settings. Without thinking, he reached up and touched Jackson's cheek, thumb brushing away tension that had settled there like dust on lens. Jackson leaned into touch, eyes closing for just a moment before Wall came back up. He couldn't afford vulnerability, not now, not when everything in his family had sacrificed was riding on his ability to perform under pressure. Next morning, Pride Week's main parade route ran directly past baseball fields. Caleb had planned a photograph celebration, documenting Austin's vibrant LGBTQ community in full display. But as he stood with camera at intersection of identity and athletics, he realized he was at his own crossroads. Jackson had mentioned game time casually, never explicitly asking Caleb to choose between Pride events and baseball. But unspoken question hung between them like heat shimmer off hot asphalt. Which world would Caleb choose to document? He chose both, setting up telephoto lens beyond outfield fence. Caleb captured Jackson's warm-up routine while Pride music drifted over from Congress Avenue. Rainbow flags fluttered in breeze visible through gaps in stadium, colorful reminder of celebration Jackson couldn't acknowledge. In third inning, with scouts scribbling notes and Jackson finding rhythm, Caleb made decision that surprised himself. He packed up camera gear and walked to Pride Festival, not to abandon Jackson, but to document what authentic celebration looked like when people weren't hiding. Photos he took that afternoon told different story than his usual campus documentation. Families with children, elderly couples holding hands after decades together, young people Caleb's age wearing their truth-like victory banners. These weren't hidden moments stolen in dorm rooms. This was love in full sunlight. When Jackson found him that evening, still processing film in makeshift darkroom, conversation they'd been avoiding finally surfaced. Jackson had pitched brilliantly, catching attention of Houston Astros' farm system director, but instead of celebration, his expression carried something heavier. He'd seen Caleb leave during game, understood choice his absence represented. For weeks they'd existed in careful balance, but watching Pride flags visible from pitcher's mound while knowing Caleb was somewhere in that crowd had cracked something open in Jackson's chest. That night, they crossed line they'd been approaching for weeks. Not just physical intimacy, but emotional honesty that left them both vulnerable and terrified. In amber glow of Caleb's desk lamp, surrounded by images of other people's courage, they created their own moment of truth. Sometimes the hardest choice isn't between right and wrong, but between two different definitions of love. Text came at 3 a.m, jolting Caleb awake. Jackson's message was brief but earth-shattering. Houston Astros made offer. Need to talk. Blue glow of phone screen felt cold against Texas heat that never really left, even in April darkness. Caleb found Jackson sitting alone on Congress Bridge, where tourists usually gathered to watch bats emerge at sunset. Now, in pre-dawn darkness, it belonged to insomniacs and lovers afraid to be seen together in daylight. Colorado River moved sluggishly below, reflecting streetlights like broken promises. Jackson's hands shook as he showed Caleb formal letter, AAA contract with clear pathway to majors, signing bonus enough to pay off his parents' mortgage and put younger sister through college. Everything Rodriguez family had sacrificed for, delivered on official letterhead with deadline that felt like countdown timer. But there were conditions, image clauses, morality requirements. Language making it clear, organization expected their investment to represent wholesome American values both on and off field, kind of values that didn't include late-night visits to another man's dorm room or stolen glances during Pride Week. Caleb listened as Jackson talked through implications, voice hollow with weight of impossible choices. Accept offer and bury this part of himself so deep it might never surface again. or walk away from everything his family had worked toward, disappointing not just himself, but everyone who believed in him. Conversation turned heated when Caleb suggested there might be other ways, other teams, opportunities that wouldn't require such complete denial of identity. Jackson's response cut like broken glass. This wasn't some liberal arts college experiment anymore. This was real life, real money, real consequences for people who couldn't afford luxury of authenticity. Caleb felt anger rising, not at Jackson, but at systems that forced such brutal calculations. He'd grown up understanding compromise, but this felt different. This was erasure, complete erasure of anything that might complicate narrative of Jackson Rodriguez, all-American baseball hero. They sat in silence for a long time, watching early morning joggers cross bridge as Austin slowly awakened around them. Caleb thought about his photography project. All those images of people brave enough to live authentically. Contrast between those celebration photos and this moment felt stark as sunrise. Jackson finally spoke, voice barely above whisper. He'd already called his father, accepted offer. Signing ceremony with Ghanaian, it was scheduled for that afternoon, complete with local media coverage and family photos. His mother was driving up from San Antonio, bringing grandmother who'd never missed games since Little League. Betrayal hit Caleb like physical force, not just decision, but secrecy. Jackson had made this choice alone, without discussion, without considering what it might mean for what they'd built together. Caleb realized he'd never actually mattered in equation, just been temporary refuge from pressure that was always going to win. When Caleb asked what happened to them, to connection they'd created, Jackson's answer was brutally honest. There had never been real them, just stolen moments between more important obligations. He'd always known this day would come, always planned to choose path that honored family's sacrifices rather than his own desires. Caleb stood up from bridge railing, understanding finally settling like sediment in still water. He'd been documenting other people's authentic love stories while living in margins of someone else's carefully constructed life. Realization burned like developer solution on exposed skin. That afternoon, Caleb watched signing ceremony from across street, camera hanging unused around neck. Jackson looked perfect in button-down shirt, surrounded by beaming family and team officials. His smile never wavered, not even when eyes found Caleb in small crowd of onlookers. Hardest lesson about love is learning when to stop fighting for someone who's already chosen their battlefield. Summer in Austin stretched endless and unforgiving, heat waves shimmering off pavement like mirages of better days. Caleb spent first weeks after Jackson's departure processing more than just film in his makeshift darkroom. He developed images, telling stories of authentic connection, while nursing hollow ache of someone who'd learned difference between being seen and being truly known. Photography project that started as academic assignment transformed into something deeper, more necessary. Caleb began documenting Austin's LGBTQ community with renewed purpose, seeking stories of people who'd chosen authenticity over safety, love over fear. Each portrait session became therapy session, each printed image proof that courage existed even when it felt impossible. His first major subject was Rosa Martinez, 70-year-old transgender woman who transitioned at 65 after a lifetime of hiding. She ran small flower stand on South Congress, arranging bouquets with hands that had built houses and raised children before finally building herself. Her story captivated Caleb, way she spoke about discovering yourself when everyone else has decided who you should be. Through Rosa, Caleb met others. Marcus, 20-year-old college dropout whose parents had disowned him, but who'd found family among drag performers at local clubs. Sarah and Jennifer, together for 15 years, planning their wedding now that Texas allowed it, faces glowing with hard-won happiness. Each session taught Caleb something new about resilience. These weren't people who'd had easy paths to self-acceptance. They were individuals who'd fought systems, families, internal voices that told them they were wrong for existing, but they'd found ways to create lives that honored their truth rather than other people's expectations. Working on project also forced Caleb to confront his own story. He'd spent 2 years documenting Austin from behind camera lens, observing belonging rather than participating in it. Jackson's rejection had shown him how much he'd been living in margins, accepting scraps of connection because he was afraid to demand full meals. In July, Caleb made a decision that surprised himself. He transferred from photography into photojournalism program, with focus on social justice storytelling. If he was going to document marginalized communities, he wanted skills to ensure their voices reached people who needed to hear them. Photography project culminated in September exhibition at local LGBTQ community center on East 4th Street. Caleb titled it Full Exposure, playing on both photographic technique and emotional vulnerability. 20 portraits lined walls, each accompanied by handwritten quotes from subjects about their journeys to authenticity. Opening night brought crowds Caleb hadn't expected. Rosa arrived in dress she'd sewn herself, beaming as strangers studied her portrait. Marcus brought his chosen family, filling space with laughter and fierce protection. Caleb stood in corner, watching people connect with images he'd created, finally understanding what it meant to use art for purpose beyond aesthetic beauty. Photography wasn't just about capturing light and shadow anymore. It was about reflecting humanity back to itself in ways that might create change. Near end of evening, familiar face appeared. Jackson stood by entrance, studying exhibition with same intensity he'd once brought to reading Caleb's contact sheets. He looked different, broader somehow, hair shorter in a way that suggested professional image management. They didn't talk that night. Jackson studied every portrait, read every quote, lingered longest at image of elderly gay couple who'd been together 50 years. When he finally approached Caleb near closing time, conversation was brief but loaded with everything they couldn't say. After Jackson left, Caleb realized something had shifted. Encounter didn't reopen wounds but confirmed they had healed correctly. He felt compassion for Jackson's situation without feeling responsible for it. Some people choose safety over truth, and that's their journey to navigate. Sometimes best stories begin when you stop waiting for someone else to write your happy ending and pick up pen yourself. Have you ever had to choose between being loved for who you pretend to be or risk being rejected for who you really are? Share your story in comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Heart Stories, where every voice matters and every authentic moment deserves celebration.